What's going on, everybody? You've got the card board coach here with your boy, Coach Co. And team, today we got a very special guest on the podcast here today. We've got Tommy, aka the Card Carver. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I'm happy to have you. So we met finally in person at the Culture Collision show in Atlanta this past weekend. Depends on when you're listening to this. And you were set up at a booth. You were giving out these awesome freaking cards. I'm gonna showcase. If you guys are just listening on Spotify, you won't be able to see this. Maybe check this out on YouTube. But it's a card. Bart Simpson says Air Wemby, and at the back, it's got Culture Collision on it, 2024, and it's just cards nostalgia worldwide. I love it. If you've been tuning into this channel for a while, I love card art, and I try to showcase as many artists as possible. And I mean, you're definitely up there, brother.
I appreciate it, man. I've been doing it for, I think this is year 3. So I feel like a lot of things, like the years are starting to show.
Yeah,
It's been 3 years of, not just making the art, but showing up at shows and meeting people like yourself, making connections. There's definitely a lot of trial and error, as I'm sure you know, when it comes to connections that you make. Not everything is going to work out. You get to know people better and you figure it out as you go. And I'm really happy with the position that I put myself in, you know, right now.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about how you got started creating card art. Like 3 years ago, it's 2021,
Yep.
and there's a pandemic going on. What overcomes you to start creating card art?
So it was kind of, this is the same story for a good number of card artists. And the amount of card artists there are now from what there was then is drastically larger,
Yeah.
right? So I felt when I first started at that point in 2021, you could probably, there's maybe like 20 to 30 of us. It was like a tight knit community going on. I've been observing some guys like Card Killer, Donnie B,
Mm-hmm.
and Kev's Cards, I think, some others, in the very beginning. I observed for a long time, and my oldest son was into collecting. He bought like a $10 box of 90 Don Russ or something like that. We ripped all the cards, and then we had this big pile of cards on the table. And I've been watching these guys do this and felt like I could do it. And I was like, well, let's give this a shot. And that's really how it started. I started cutting up those cards from that pile, did a few of them, sold a few of them, on in like Facebook groups and maybe on Instagram. And I just kept plugging along.
I love that. How did you come up with your specific style? Like how does it speak to you? Where does it come from?
I love that question because I do take a lot of pride in my personal style. For me, it's just very natural. I like to say I am nostalgia. The cards that I really like to make, and I typically just make what I like and then put it up for sale.
Hmm.
I occasionally do commissions, but I'd rather just do what I feel. And I think that shows in my work, especially like the pop art mashups, as I like to call them, that have like a lot of different images. And I basically, the whole point of it and what I'm trying to achieve is just by making kind of a time capsule, this nostalgic time capsule. Each time you look at it, you might see something that reminds you of playing video games with your friends in a sleepover. It might remind you of sitting on the couch watching the games with your dad, going to the card shop, reading comic books, all these different things that can kind of pull you back to a certain point in time. So it's very nostalgia driven.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just got off a call with a friend of mine, and he asked me if you could summarize collectible space, how would you go about doing that? And the one word that just kept coming to mind is nostalgia.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why so many different areas of the hobby popped off during the pandemic, yeah, we have tons of time to just kind of sit and do nothing, but you find that a lot of people gravitated towards nostalgia. And whether that was like collecting old Transformers, or it was like knitting and like baking, like because all these things kind of reminded us of like simpler times, maybe a moment with your mother or your aunt or your brother or your dad or your, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's interesting that you mentioned that you want these to be time capsules, because I think that, that's a wonderful representation of where we're at, and it's a nice little marker, at every step along the way. And I'm sure that if you were going to go back and look at some of the stuff that you made in 2021, early 2021, mid 2022, late 2023 even, it feels like so long ago. I don't even remember December, man. Like, yeah, so much stuff happens in everyday life, right? Like it's just kind of crazy. And if you don't stop and sit in it, and at the very least find a way to create that marker, like it's just all gone after a while.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, and, having all those different images can really pull you back to different things, and that's why I like those so much. Especially, and I really like to work in like little pieces, like really tiny details that you aren't going to notice the first maybe even couple times you look at the card, and then there's this like aha type of moment where you're like, oh, Daffy Duck is hiding behind that leg back there when I turn the card at just the right angle, the only way I can see it. So it's like little Easter eggs almost. I
Really?
Yeah, I love that type of stuff.
I love that stuff, man. That's crazy. That's like it's like kind of world, Where's Waldo type, like it's like a surprise. It's like one of those movies where you watch it the first time and you don't quite, like, you watch it through and through and you're like, oh, that's pretty good. And then you watch it a second time, you're like, oh, I completely missed that like random, not random, but like that piece of dialogue that really added to this moment, or I didn't even see that thing in the background that really kind of changed my perception of this whole setting.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. It's like card inception.
Yeah, and the best part is if I can avoid it, which I can most of the time, unless I get a commission request from somebody where like I really want this image from this movie of this character, they just don't have a trading card for it. At that point, I'm forced into finding an image and printing it out. But 95% of the cards I make are 100% trading cards that I'm using. Like all the images are coming from vintage trading cards. And which is easy for the 80s and 90s stuff, which is my jam anyway, because
Yeah.
back then they were making a trading card for pretty much every single show or movie that was popular. So it's easy to do.
I think one thing that's really genuine about you is the fact that even if you listen to the way that you talk about like commissioned like pieces, it just sounds like it's not you. You know what I mean? Like, and I actually really appreciate that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
because it means that the art that you create is art that comes from like the soul. It's like that's the stuff that you're really passionate about. That's the stuff that really fuels you. I mean, obviously you have to do commissions and you'll put in the work for them and they'll come out great, and but that stuff just doesn't give you the same life that just doing whatever speaks to you does. And I actually really admire that.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's something that I really, like I said, I take a lot of pride in my work. I take my time with it. I do take a long time to build the cards. Sometimes I spend more time even just looking through what I have for inventory, and just finding the right images. And once I pull all those cards, like if I'm going to do, I've got a Hulk Hogan I made recently that has like probably somewhere like 8 to 10 different images mashed up into it. So I got to find all those different cards I'm going to mix up to start with. And then I'll lay them out on the table with the card that I'm actually like remaking. And I might just look at them, moving them around, playing around with them for like an hour sometimes, just even trying to figure out which ones are even going to play with what I'm trying to achieve. I try to like you try to lean towards like color matching type of things are
Yeah.
attractive to the eye and stuff. So there's a lot of things that look for. But before I even start really cutting and making the card, I might have an hour of just looking at stuff, trying to make sure that it's going to flow the right way.
So
You know,
interesting. What does your process look like when you get stuck?
when I get stuck, it looks like me. getting up and down a lot, going up and down stairs, like going to buy different binders and different boxes, trying to pull more stuff. I will work on cards. People ask me how long a certain card took me to make, and a lot of times I can't say because the way I work, I might sit down for a couple hours on like a Monday night when I have the time,
Hmm.
and whatever I achieve or finish in that time, if it's not done, I might not get back to it until that weekend or maybe even the following week sometimes. So it's all bits and pieces here and there. So that type of stuff, it's hard to say. But yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
mean, it kind of adds to the same narrative where like that's why a commission piece would probably be a little difficult for you, right? Because like you kind of let stuff come to you. And obviously, you know, you have a life as well and you're not like when it comes to artists, you guys have to kind of work at your own pace, right? You can't really force creativity.
100%. And that's why, like, sometimes, I mean, I've had cards that took me months to do, where I'm just working, like you're saying, I'm working at my own pace on something I want to create. And if I do run into a block and I pulled a bunch of cards and I'm looking at this stuff, I'm like, this isn't really speaking to me right now. I'll put it away and I might wait until the next time I visit my buddy's shop, my LCS, and get a bunch more non sport stuff and kind of start from scratch a little bit.
Yeah. I can see that being a little disheartening too, though. If you really want to put something out and you just don't have the opportunity to because you just can't get that spark going, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It can be disheartening at times, but you have to learn to work with it. I recently have kind of found like a good workflow for
Yeah,
myself. Like I'm actually like caught in it right now. It's just like it's a river, and I know that I need to keep it going, and I know I can, and I'm going to. It's kind of the first time I've really been in that flow. It's going to be more difficult going into summertime because I'm
for
gonna have like
sure.
all three kids doing sports, but
Yeah.
uh, I have to keep it going because right now I've been building up this wave, and it's like this big wave has been building, building, and it's not done building yet. You know, so I'm just trying to ride that wave as long as I can, and just make as much happen as I can. And right now, I can see it. Like it's all building up to the point that I've been trying to get to right now, and
This
it's a
man
great.
is this man is out here doing this with 3 kids. I love that. Do you know that, man? That's like, people don't
Yeah,
understand that like the work that goes in behind the scenes and like to your point earlier, like you still have a life and there's so many things you have to take care of, responsibilities, and you're still putting time and energy into something you're passionate about as a business for you, like so I like kudos to you.
I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of artists out there that maybe are just. I think there's a lot of them that just don't realize, maybe a little naive. They think that just creating great art and posting it on Instagram and tagging tops or whatever company is going to get them that dream situation that they're hoping for. And it takes so much more than that. It's constantly trying to get meetings. If you can get the meetings, it's actually conducting yourself in those meetings like accordingly
Yeah,
and getting things done, knowing how to talk to people. It's also packing your bag and taking trips. The best decision that I ever made in all of this was packing my bag up, taking a chance, and flying to Atlantic City for the National a couple of years ago. It was my first big show, my first show out of state, um, and the amount of networking I did, you can't put a monetary value on it because I'm still like to this day building on relationships and doing things off of what happened 2 years ago at the National. Like I wouldn't be here right today in the different positions I'm in without having done that. You know.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel the exact same way. Like we were locked down for like two years and a bit, and so like the first opportunity I could get out, I think I went to the Mint last year, and it was like just complete game changer. Like the to your point, the people that I met, the relationships that I built, the experience itself, like all of that, I'd spend triple that to get what I got. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were to tell me like, hey, you're gonna end up with all this stuff. So I think it's important to note, like, for anyone who's watching this or listening, it doesn't have to be card related, but like if you're gonna do something, you have to take that leap. Like there becomes a moment like, and I guess my next question to you is like, when did you decide and how did you decide that national that was you were going to pick that spot?
To me, like I still view it as this, and that's that it's the Super Bowl of what we do, you know? I think that that's most people's perception. I'm not sure what else would really top it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something that comes close. I haven't been to them.
Hmm.
And I was just at a point where, I'm selling cards. It is a competitive space, and there's a lot of other guys doing it. What am I going to do right now at this point to set myself apart? And going to the national and hitting the floor with a case full of cards and meeting as many people as I could was the move. And I mean, it's paid dividends. And to your point, you can apply this to anything in life. If you want something, you have to take that chance. You have to just go out and get it. The worst thing that's going to happen is it doesn't work out, but at least you tried and you know.
I love that. What do what do you tell yourself in moments like that where you're, like a little nervous about what could happen and like yeah, you have to try, but I mean there's definitely moments where you're like, we talk ourselves out of things, right? Constantly. We're like, oh, maybe this not one, or this isn't gonna like this is maybe too financially straining, or I don't know how I'm gonna make it work, or like what is the dialogue in your brain for something like that?
I have this voice that tells me, just do it. Just do it. It'll work itself out, and if it doesn't, you'll figure it out. Either regardless of what happens, it'll all play out, and you'll figure it out. And I do get nervous. I get nervous as shit, and I do take financial risks sometimes, But that's what you have to do if you want to succeed in anything, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like for instance, the culture collision, right? Like you were handing cards out that you personally made and you took time and energy and supplies and all. And I mean, realistically speaking, the worst case scenario is you give all of them out. You spent all this time and energy and you've flown to Atlanta and you've put all this time. I said that time already, but
Yeah,
and nobody either people take them and they throw them in the garbage or you know what I mean? Like I'm talking about like the worst case scenario, right? And there's no
right.
callbacks, there's no relationship building. I I, I mean that's terrifying for the average person, right? So I think it's also important to note that how often does the worst case scenario come to fruition? Like
I
never,
haven't, I haven't really
never,
seen it yet,
right?
man.
Right?
There's. I am a strong believer in that there is a lot to be said about having that confidence and speaking things into existence, putting them in the air. And like there are times for sure, like I said, where I'm taking chances, but like you said, the worst thing that can happen is that worst case scenario, and I've never seen it happen. I figure things out. I put a lot of faith in just like figuring it out, you know?
And it's like once you figure one thing out, it makes you more likely to figure the next thing out, and then the next thing out, and then the next thing out, right? Because you're like, you have something to lean on. You're like, to your point, like building that wave. It's like a lot of that wave has to do with that instant gratification that comes from like you doing what you said you were gonna do, right? And then overcoming something, and then like, boom, I did that, so I can do this again, and I can do this again, and I can just keep replicating this just a little bit better or a little bit, larger or whatever, like bigger scale, whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden you build that wave that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, even if you do lose, there's always something to gain even in a loss, because now I've gained the experience of trying to do whatever it was. And maybe it didn't work out, but now I have an angle and a different view, so that if it's something that I'm really passionate about and really want to still make happen, I know how to attack from a different angle now, you
Yeah,
know? Because
so true.
I've seen the field, and I have a better idea of how to win, you know?
I love that. Talk to me about the wave you're on right now. Everyone wants to hear it.
Man. Um Dude, like I said, it just comes off of showing up, knowing how to meet people. I've met a lot of good people. I've made relationships that have been great, some of them not so great, and you move on through that. And I'm at a point now where I'm going to Atlanta for Maine. I was actually a guest for Culture Collision. The cards for me weren't that I was handing out weren't like a financial liability. I designed those for Culture Collision. They're the official giveaway.
Love it.
Uh, and also about those cards, this is all part of the wave. Building relationships with the different grading companies. Beckett now authenticates my autograph, which is huge because I'm the only card artist that cuts cards and makes them the way that I do, that has that happening for them.
Yeah.
And I now have CGC authenticating my cards also. And that card that you have from Culture Collision, all three of them, CGC will actually grade those cards
Wow.
as if it was pulled out of a pack. And it's going to be time stamped, talking about like time capsules and such, as a way to remember that card show, and like for kids. I had a dad that came up to my table with his two sons. He bought three of the cards and he went straight to CGC to get them slabbed. And it's going to say the title of the card, each of the three cards as an individual name. So it'll say title, Air Wemby, for example, and then underneath it, 2024 Culture Collision and the card carver. So to really make it a collectible item from the show, I can't wait to see those starting to hit the wild, because I think that's going to add, like, it obviously adds a level of collectability when people start flexing their tens, right?
Yeah,
And
of course.
there's not going to be a ton of those, because like one of the cards in particular, they came in fine, but they weren't packed great, so they shook a little bit. So some of the corners were like clearly white a little bit on them. So
Yeah.
like getting those tens is going to be hard. So it's going to be fun to start seeing those hit the wild. So the wave is all built on all these little things that I'm putting together. I'm talking to Cards and Coffee about their shop in New York and doing a bunch of art in there. Right now, I'm planning activations for the VIP room at the National with
Love that.
Ludex. Talking about doing some type of card art workshop with kids and stuff there. Um, I I'm doing these dual sign cards right now. I need to get some more artists involved, but I've got cards where I took a card from Lauren Taylor, Chuck Stiles, Andy Friedman, Yvonne Beslick, from B Brothers and the Croatian Twins, um, Marley McFly. And the idea is that I take a card from each of these artists. I do what I do with it, make a custom, an art card, and then I sign the back, and then I have the artist sign it as well. And then they're being slabbed by Beckett. So I just sent like 8 of them to Beckett to get slabbed.
Wow.
And I'm going to present them all at the National. It's the first that I know of where there's a collection being built like this, that's dual authenticated signatures from both artists.
I've never heard of something like that. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's incredibly unique. I love that.
yeah, I appreciate it. So the plan is to, kind of unveil all these cards. I hope to have 20 of them with like 20 different artists, and I'm going to unveil them at the National as part of the VIP room, or maybe some other type of event that will be happening there. So, yeah, man, just a lot of planning. I also have a 2-day show that I do here in Maine, the Maine Collector Convention in Augusta, Maine. That's late June this year, and we're starting to plan that. We have Jose Canseco as our big
Wow.
autograph guest that we're really excited about, because you don't really see names like that in Maine,
Yeah.
uh, which is, creating experiences like doing trade nights and throwing shows is also something that I love to do and that I'm heavily involved in. So, yeah, man.
How does it feel to have like everything kind of come full circle, man? And like having your autograph authenticated, and like I mean that's such a special moment. And even like cards you've created being slabbed.
It's a total trip. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, it's super humbling, like those moments, people asking you for your signature, knowing that companies, want to work with me and, willing to do these things for me and stuff. Um, I mean, like 10-year-old me that was collecting cards never would have imagined,
Yeah.
in a million years. So yeah, it's a total trip. It's awesome.
I love it. Let's go back to 10-year-old you. Like how does all this start? How does the collecting journey start? Does it start with sports cards? Does it start with something else?
I believe it started with sports cards. My mom and my grandmother were both collectors. My mom collected presidential pins.
I love
Uh,
that.
my grandmother collected cut glass, which is like, back like long time ago, all the like bases and stuff like that, plates and things that had these ornate, patterns on them were actually cut by hand.
Wow.
And she collected that stuff. And they would bring me to antique stores on the weekends, and I enjoyed seeing that type of stuff. That's kind of like my first introduction to collectibles in general. But my great uncle played Major League Baseball, so my first memory of sports cards is his stuff.
Wow.
I actually have his '57 Red Sox road jersey here,
That is incredible.
and he's wearing his 57 on his 57 tops card. I don't know how well we can see it here.
Yeah, that's pretty good right there.
He's wearing his road jersey. So
Wow.
that's likely the jersey on this card.
That's a gamer back there, like behind you?
The jersey, yeah,
Yeah.
dude. So I've been looking.
What?
Yeah, man. So I've been looking for
What?
I've been looking for one of his game used bats for almost 10 years now. Never found a bat. And you'd think that there would be one, because how many bats do they go through?
Yeah.
Had this guy on Facebook reach out to me, because I'm in a lot of groups, a lot of different, like every group I can find. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a Billy Klaus game used bat or anything cool to do with his career. Right.
Yeah.
And this guy messages me from Pennsylvania, and he says, hey, I don't have your uncle's bat, but I have his jersey. I'm like, excuse me? And we talked for like a couple months, because I've never made a purchase like this. And it wasn't an insane purchase. I
Yeah.
paid just under a K for it. It's his original 1957 game worn Red Sox flannel jersey.
How did that guy get it?
Turns out his uncle owns an estate auction business. And through that auction, through some type of auction, somebody had this jersey. I don't know the full more to it than that, but that's how he came into it.
That's
And he
so
said
cool.
he had no plans to sell it, but he, saw my story and knew that it was much more valuable to me than anybody else. He just liked it because it was cool. Yeah.
Dude, it's from 1957. Of course,
Yeah.
like
It,
that's so wild. And I mean,
yeah.
kudos to him for not like gouging, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why the space is like also wonderful. Because like I find that if you meet the right people and you happen to, I don't know, share some tidbits of your own personal life, and you kind of fall into the right places. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%. Um, yeah, I've had a number of things gifted to me through, I call it the Billy Klaus collection. And it really is so much more than just cards. And I collect baseballs. I collect clippings from old newspapers. I collect Type 1 photos, which, like, when I started buying those, I didn't even know that they were called that. To me, they were just cool. They're photographs of my uncle. Some of them obviously like very rare. Like I have got
Wow.
him. This is him with Ted Williams when in their playing days.
Dude, this is a wild
Um,
collection.
this is game letterhead from the
Yeah.
Toledo Sox um, minor league team. So it's a team letterhead from the 1953 Toledo Sox minor league team, and it's signed by the entire team. So like literally anything I can get my hands on. I have an original pen and pencil drawing that was done for the Dallas Sun Journal in 1950 when he played for the Dallas Eagles minor league team. I've yet to find a copy of the newspaper yet. That's like a little side mission, So like these little things pop up. Like I find this crazy scarce original artwork, and now I need to find the actual paper, right?
Yeah. Something
Like
that was
all these,
a little bit more mass produced, right?
yeah,
You're
all
like,
these,
can't find it anywhere.
yeah. So there's like all these little side quests that pop up.
But like, isn't that collecting? Especially, and I think that that's kind of what we lost in 2020 and 2021. So much of it was about money. And I really think that you're starting to see more and more of this like deeply rooted just treasure hunts of
Yeah,
like you find something you like, and now you're on a mission to find other things that make you feel that way. I know for me, like I've always loved jerseys, but I've been on an absolute rampage lately. It doesn't need to be a gamer, but it needs to be like a jersey that like really means something. That like that player on that team like means something to me. You know, there was like a point in time where I'm like, like that, it hits me in my feels where I remember seeing this guy play on this team, and that's why I want this jersey. Also, because gamers are way too expensive.
Yeah. I am with all of my collecting, like what you were talking about right there. If it doesn't move me, do I really need it? And I have to talk myself out of things from time to time, just like take a step back and be like this car is like dazzling and like it caught my eye and it's cool, but take a second, Tom. Like, does this move you? Or is it gonna end up in a box and like however many months you're gonna be like, let's get rid of it. I don't want stuff like that I'm gonna end up wanting to just get rid of. It's like a temporary thrill. I'm looking to add things that I know are going to make me happy for a very long time.
Yeah, and I mean, look at the collectibles you've acquired, dude. Just like they're all hung, like this is like you have that's you and behind you. All that stuff is just contributed to kind of where you are on a regular basis.
Yeah, 100%. I take a great deal of pride in how I collect. Just same way that I, make my art and everything.
Of
Like
course.
I really curate everything and take my time with it and make sure I do it right. Like I could have thrown this jersey in a friggin' Hobby Lobby
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
and like, no, I'm not going to do that.
I love that. I love that. You're so like particular. It's perfect though, man. That's exactly how I mean, that's how collectors are, right? Like that's how they
Yeah,
should like collecting should be like that deeply rooted, like, no, 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 this needs to be right here and it can't have a scratch here or whatever the case may be. Everyone has their own little their little quirks, right?
yeah. And I never thought about it till like just this moment. I don't think kind of like made the connection, but in the same way with the way I make my cards and the way that I collect this stuff, I'm really trying to preserve moments and time. So like, especially with my great uncle, we're going on now. When he first started playing, it's not going to be that much longer. When my kids inherit this stuff, it'll be 100. It's all going to be like 100 years old. So I am researching and trying to find stories and photos and everything to do with his career now, because it's only a matter of time before it's all just kind of lost.
Yeah.
You know, people forget about it. So I'm trying to catalog all of it now, trying to capture those moments before they're gone. And in a way, I guess I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with the art that I create.
Dude,
And
100 years is a long time.
he actually, so right out of high school, he got drafted, started playing in 1947. He was just a kid. He was 17 years old, I think, 16 or 17. And he didn't make the minors until 55.
Wow.
And there was a period in the winter where he was going to Puerto Rico and playing winter ball. He was on a team with Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson in Puerto Rico.
That is
Like,
incredible.
yeah, and then he played from 55 to 63 in the majors. He retired from the bigs. He went to Japan for almost a full season, wanted out, and walked into the manager's office and slammed a glass on the table. The glass shattered. He somehow didn't cut his hand, but they let him out of the contract. He came home and was a minor league manager for like at least 3 or 4 more years, where he also would take an at bat once in a while. Like the guy was a lifer, you know.
I love that, man. And I love the fact that you're able to share those stories.
Yeah, it's incredible to have that connection with the game. I've always realized and appreciated it, even as like a kid, because I would, he would come and visit from time to time. And my best friend lived next door to my grandma in Illinois. And like when my uncle was coming, I'd let him know, and he would have some cards ready to have him sign them. So I realized right away that it was something special to have going on.
I absolutely love that. And I love your story, brother. I want other people to get more exposure to you. So, what I want you to do right now is plug the living crap out of all your stuff, your socials, your whatever you need to do, man. The floor is yours.
All right, I appreciate it. So, I mean, you
Of
can find
course.
me on all socials at the Card Carver. It's really simple. The Card Carver everywhere: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a website, thecardcarver.com, and you're going to find me at the National this summer, 100%. Keep your eye out on news for the VIP room and other, things going on around the National, because I'm going to be everywhere. I'm going to be at Culture Collision again in September. We have the Maine Collector Convention coming in June here in Maine. And I'm sure I'll be popping up at some other stuff too. So keep an eye on my socials to see what I have going on, because there's going to be plenty going on. I should be in New York City at least a couple times this year. So, find me,
I
come and say
love
hi.
I love that. Tommy, man, I just honestly want to thank you for jumping on here because I learned so much about your heritage and your collecting, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. And hopefully reignited something that, could have been lost for some people, or maybe evaluate why they collect what they collect, or maybe they got to stick around for a great story. So I really appreciate you jumping on here, Jan.
Yeah, likewise. Anytime, man. I appreciate
Appreciate
it.
you. Appreciate you. Team, do not forget to check out Card Carver across all platforms. For now, hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Cardboard Coach. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Coach Co and the Card Carver are out of here. Peace.